This isn't your daddy's sci-fi, it's your great-granddad's. Forbidden Planet stars Leslie Nielsen, Walter Pidgeon, and Anne Francis, and was directed by Fred Wilcox. It was released in 1958 and became a cultural juggernaut and defined science fiction for the next few decades. Forbidden Planet is groundbreaking, and it's absolutely stunning how many modern sci-fi elements we can trace back to this single movie. This movie was the first film to be set entirely on another planet, have an entirely synth score, show a humanoid robot with a distinct personality, show a human crew traveling faster than light in a ship built by fellow humans, show a Navy-like crew operating in space, show a replicator-like device that can produce food. In this case, bourbon. Lots of bourbon.
It's smooth, too.
Introduce the concept of a powerful and long-dead alien race that have left their advanced technology around for humans to use. Show an alien device that makes humans' fears and dreams into deadly realities. And show a cloaked or invisible alien that is made visible during an attack. I could keep going, but if any of this sounds familiar, it's because you've seen them in countless movies and television shows since. Star Trek, Mass Effect, Stargate, Predator, there are too many to list, and they all have Forbidden Planet to thank, at least a little bit. However, is this movie actually good, or just inventive?
Where have you been? I've beamed and beamed.
Sorry, miss, I was giving myself an oil job.
Sci-fi certainly was different in a pre-2001 A Space Odyssey world, and Forbidden Planet has many of the same flaws other movies had at the time. But before we get into all that, I should actually talk about the plot. I'm very much spoiling a 67-year-old movie here, but I want to go into this film a little deeper than usual.
That's what she said.
Anyway, the movie opens with a voiceover in the tone of a man who really wants to sell us cigarettes.
By 2200 AD, they had reached the other planets of our solar system.
He provides us with a little important background. After the space race, things kept going until humanity discovered faster than light travel and began to spread out amongst the stars. By the 23rd century, we were reaching into the vast unknown. One such group is the gallant crew of the United Planets cruiser C-57D. A name to be proud of. Led by Commander Adams, they are on a mission to investigate a human colony that Earth has lost contact with. Right away, you're probably asking yourself, wait, isn't this just Star Trek?
Space. The final frontier.
Yes, Gene Roddenberry did directly cite Forbidden Planet as the main inspiration for his pilot episode, The Cage. You really only need to put these two screenshots next to each other to see that. Of course, Roddenberry posited the wild and radical idea that an advanced spaceship could be crewed by more than just middle-aged white men. We zoom in on the spacefaring hubcap and meet its crew. Commander Adams is played by a much younger and way hotter than usual Frank Drebin. He further pioneers this genre with some various technobabble amongst the crew. They all have to stand in an early transporter effect that protects them from the immense force of coming out of light speed, which is a detail echoing actual physics. One assumes it took maybe a few crews turning into red paste before they figured that one out. After some more techno jargon and some impressive Golden Age effects, the ship sets down on Altair 4. This is supposed to be the home of a whole colony of scientists. Their ship, the Bellerophon, set down 20 years ago. However, the crew of the C-57D finds no signs of them beyond a single household. Arriving to greet the landed ship is an adorable hover car driven by one of the greatest robots in cinematic history. And that's my cue to talk about the one and only Robby the robot.
For your convenience, I am monitored to respond to the name Robby.
Created for Forbidden Planet, Robby's reputation and even filmography stretches far beyond this single movie. Even if you've never seen or even heard of Forbidden Planet, chances are you have seen this walking radiator before. His design was a radical change from any other depiction of robots in media of the time. He was also very expensive to build. He reportedly cost about $120,000, which is about $1.5 million adjusted for inflation today. This made Robby the most expensive single prop ever made at the time, and still very expensive by today's standards. I guess MGM really wanted to get their money's worth. After making his debut in Forbidden Planet, Robby appeared in an additional 29 roles in film and television. It's a career that a flesh and blood actor would be envious of. There's even a chance you may still see him in something now, as his most recent appearances were in shows like The Big Bang Theory and the second Looney Tunes movie. Let's face it though, most of y'all recognize him from Gremlins.
Is totally without meaning. Pardon me, sir. Stuff? Thick and heavy.
After previously speaking with him over the radio, Commander Adams and a few of his crew are taken to meet one of the only survivors, Dr. Morbius.
Do it. Say Morbin time. Say Morbin time. Morbin time. Morbin time. Morbius. Couple of guys.
You know what? Out of respect to you, my crew members, I will refrain from making any Morbin time jokes during this video. They're old, played out, and probably weren't that funny to begin with. Still though, I want you to know how hard it is for me right now to not. It would be so easy. No. I am better than that. I am stronger. I have the strength of a vampire doctor who's an expert in blood. If you want to thank me for my restraint, just leave a like or something. Anyway, Dr. Morbius keeps insisting that he needs no help and that the crew should just leave. It is in no way super suspicious. According to him, the rest of the scientists died due to some incomprehensible horror, but he and his wife were really chill, so they were fine. He also gives them a free presentation of all of his cool stuff. Not only is Robby a walking, talking AI, he is also a matter replicator. He is programmed with the 3 laws as well, incapable of harming a human. Dr. Morbius also has a cool house that features a disintegrator beam and automatic shutters. He even shows off his best invention yet, his daughter. Immediately, every single man who isn't her father begins to hit on Alta. Given that she was born on this world and they arrived 20 years ago, well, I question some of these characters' motives.
Of course, the doc can be trusted, too, in the daytime.
What about the commander?
Any girl or woman who lets him get her alone, anywhere.
Gross. Alta is also very special. She has a connection to animals that calms and tames them. She also has some kind of connection to the planet itself. Dr. Morbius and Commander Adams agree to work together so the crew can contact command to report the situation. The deal is that Morbius will report his findings as long as he and his daughter are allowed to stay on the planet. The crew cannibalize their ship to build a long-range transmitter. Robby and Alta drop off shipments of materials, and both end up flirting with the crew. Robby meets the ship's alcoholic chef, who asks the robot to replicate enough bourbon to supply a season of Mad Men. Alta, however, is the victim of so much sexual harassment. Alta was born sexy yesterday, on a planet with only her dad. So as a result, she doesn't know what things like kissing and consent are.
But why should people want to kiss each other?
Oh, it's an old custom. All of the really high civilizations go in for it. Only too happy to show you.
Well, thank you very much, Lieutenant.
No trouble at all.
Gross! Commander Adams busts his subordinate assaulting the subject of the rescue mission he's overseeing. He only gives the man a light chastising before he turns his ire to Alta, who he admonishes for being too attractive. I think crew members were starting to get to the core of the problem, and the one thing about Forbidden Planet that has aged the worst. This movie is a misogynistic nightmare. It's almost like a satire of misogyny if it wasn't so jaw-droppingly sincere about it. The film's hero, Commander Adams, makes casual remarks about a replicator being a housewife's dream. No, man. That's everyone's dream. He bullies and condescends to Alta, yells at her, and says she deserves to be assaulted.
Well, look at yourself. You see, you can't run around like that in front of men, particularly not a space wolf like Farman. So for Pete's sake, go home and put on something that'll, anything. It would have served you right if I hadn't, and he...
Spoiler alert, but these two end up together, even though he is practically twice her age. Gross! That night, the ship is invaded by an invisible being that sabotages the main drive. No one saw anything because the creature is invisible, duh. This leaves Adams pretty angry with his men. He heads back to Dr. Morbius and demands answers. Also, Robby shocks a monkey. What a star. Adams also takes the time to creep on Alta some more and then admonishes her for being a clearly uneducated child. He then kisses her. Our hero. Well, actually, more like your great-grandpa's hero. The pair are jumped by Alta's tiger, who is no longer calmed by her presence. Adams is forced to disintegrate it mid-leap. In case you're wondering, yes, they are linking Alta's superpowers to her virginal innocence. The hornier she gets, the less powerful she becomes. Yeah, tell me about it, ladies. Dr. Morbius then explains that the planet was once home to an ancient alien race named the Krell. They were super advanced and once reached out to even our primordial Earth. However, 2,000 centuries ago, they vanished overnight, leaving only their machines. There's a great detail that the only thing Dr. Morbius knows about how they could have looked is a single archway they had to move through and some of their lab equipment. Morbius gives them a tour of the massive subterranean facility they left behind. Alien labs, libraries, power generators. It's the find of the millennium, and even the good doctor has only scratched the surface. Not for lack of trying though, because it turns out for the last 20 years he's been sticking his face in every piece of equipment he's found. This has had some unrevealed side effects. Not only has his own intelligence increased, he also has something lurking in his mind. Now's a good time to talk about something that has aged incredibly well, and that's this movie's special effects. Using a mix of miniatures, matte paintings, and basic compositing, the film's production shot the entire thing on various sound stages. While it all looks adorably fake by today's standards, it was a triumph of effects at the time. Even in this day and age, the mix of matte painting and miniatures still create these visually striking landscapes and vistas of a truly alien world. This movie is full of color and creativity in its mix of animation, prop work, and camera movement. The sequence where Morbius and Adams walk through a massive power reactor also provides an impressive sense of scale. There's also a nostalgic and retro-futurist aesthetic to this movie that has aged quite well. I could see a lot of these design elements being used in something like Strange New Worlds. A quick cut back to the ship shows that the crew has set up a perimeter force field, and more importantly, that the cook's order of bourbon has arrived. Something pushes its way through the fence and once again makes its way onto the ship. Something big. A crewman is killed off screen. Dr. Morbius is also refusing to share his cool new toys. He wants to act as some sort of techno god, handing out advancements if and when he deems fit. I'm pretty sure that won't fly with any government, let alone a human one. A cast of the invisible monster's footprint also raises more questions, as it seems to belong to some kind of evolutionary freak of nature. Or, just an elephant with a bad hangnail. The crew bury their dead member, and Dr. Morbius once again tells them to run while they can. That night, they prepare for an all-out attack on their invisible guest, setting up laser turrets right out of Star Wars. They form a perimeter and wait. In the movie's best scene, they get into an all-out battle with the giant monster. It stalks the perimeter and attacks in a scene that is a direct ancestor to this scene from Aliens. Or I guess, this scene in Congo. Hey kids, remember Congo?
Stop eating my sesame cake!
Eventually, the monster hits the electric fence and its energy makes it visible to the crew. They fire a cacophony of laser blasts at the alien as it writhes in pain and anger. A few dudes even manage to get way too close and end up dead for their trouble. Eventually, the monster disappears, just as Dr. Morbius wakes up. What a coincidence. Adams and his medical officer decide that they're going to break into the Krell lab and use the machine to boost one of their minds. They sneak back to Dr. Morbius's house and get by Robby with a little help from Alta. The Doc tries to use the machine, but it destroys his brain. He does learn that the Krell were destroyed because they built a device that could make what they imagine an instant reality. However, they forgot about monsters from the id. That's right, this guy is actually the physical manifestation of that intrusive thought that tells you to drive into traffic. Doc dies, and Morbius arrives just in time for another yelling at from the film's lead. The truth ends up breaking him further, especially when he learns that the monster killing people is a manifestation of his subconscious. The id monster attacks his home and threatens his daughter in what is sure to be a metaphor for something, though I'm not even sure if the movie knows what. Not even Robby can protect them because he is forbidden from harming a human. They retreat down into the lab where Morbius is forced to confront his own id. He manages to defeat it at the cost of his own life. He then helps Adam set the self-destruct on everything with his dying breath. The crew escape the planet just before it explodes, taking Alta and Robby with them. The end. So that's one of the most pivotal science fiction films ever made. It's safe to say that the space-based sci-fi we know today owes a lot to Forbidden Planet. Many were inspired, directly or even indirectly, by this seminal work, and it's not hard to see why. Forbidden Planet is filled with so many great ideas and concepts. Small elements of this movie have been spun off into their own whole works. You can see aspects of the Krell in Mass Effect, Stargate, and countless episodes of Star Trek. The idea of subconscious monsters made manifest has appeared in works like Sphere, It, and countless episodes of Star Trek. Even Robby stands as a grandfather to C-3PO, TARS, Baymax, and even Mr. Data. His design is iconic, and he even has a delightfully matter-of-fact personality.
Nice climate you have here. High oxygen content.
I rarely use it myself, sir. It promotes rust.
It takes a lot to outshine Leslie Nielsen, especially when you have a ham radio for a face. However, it's hard to talk around the horrific misogyny on display in this movie. It's an odd sort of time capsule of a point in history when women were infantilized and looked on as foolish or childish for even existing. Forbidden Planet even acts as sort of a perfect encapsulation of almost every term you would hear in a gender studies class. The male characters display heaps of toxic masculinity. They sexualize a young, seemingly virginal woman, and then they blame her for their feelings. They pack themselves 20 deep on a tin can spaceship and then complain that there are no women around to bone. They hit on Alta in front of her own father the moment they meet her, and then get mad at her for causing insubordination. Alta is no better. She is the very definition of born sexy yesterday. She has no real thoughts on what's happening, acts with very little agency, and falls for the charm of a man who has yelled at her no less than 3 times in a day. Forbidden Planet also helps explain a lot of the roots of misogyny in geek culture. This movie was a massive hit, especially with younger audiences. Little boys in the 60s through 70s would catch countless matinee screenings of this film, and it became a regular staple of afternoon television. That's millions of little boys being told over and over again that this was how cool space captains treated women, that this was how you saved the day and got the girl. I am so sorry, little boomer boys, but you were deeply lied to. Now, obviously, this does not excuse decades of misogyny and sexism, but it does show some of its permutations. Even Forbidden Planet's more progressive offshoot, Star Trek, wasn't immune from this very same misogyny. This starship crew may have women on it, but that doesn't stop them from being infantilized.
Brain and brain, what is brain?
Forbidden Planet is hardly forgotten. Its poster alone is one of the most iconic in film history. However, I don't know anyone who is actually sitting down to watch this movie, especially if you're under 30. If you're a sci-fi junkie and want to see the literal start of so many tropes we love today, well, this is an important movie to watch. However, I really feel like Forbidden Planet is the perfect movie to remake today. Its iconography, style, and even name are instantly recognizable thanks to 60 years of cultural osmosis. A modern film could do far more justice to the alien world and imagery of Robby and the C-57D, while dumping or maybe even addressing the misogyny of the original. The biggest concern would probably be accusations that the remake is derivative of all the sci-fi that was inspired by Forbidden Planet, which would be pretty ironic. Thank you for watching, crew members. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not. We also have ways of financially supporting the channel linked below. But thank you for watching this video. Remember, stay safe and be who you are.